It feels good to be back. Welcome back to another episode of Let the Journey Begin. I am your host, Jason Waller, alongside my co-host for today, Alex. You've been here back to back, man. What's going on?
Yeah, it's nice getting a little bit of a feel with Hilary and then with Jason, and then I'll be back with Hilary and then probably back with Jason. Then I might be just by myself one day.
Yeah, probably, dude. It sounds about right.
But hey, you're back. Welcome back. You were on a couple TV trips and personal trips and things like that.
A lot going on, man. I was dealing with my grandma, who unfortunately we found out she was diagnosed with cancer. So I was out there helping my family get medical care brought into the house, and which was crazy. But also TV's has been very overwhelming. The filming for The Hills and obviously the event, getting that all dialed in so we could have it was a lot, but everything went really well.
It's good. I'm glad to hear that. On a little bit brighter note, we gave Hilary the day off because today is her birthday.
Yeah.
So happy birthday, Hilary. We hope to have you back in studio next week, which I'm sure we will, along with Damon Sharp, your producer, which will be a great episode. Talk a little bit about music and what you guys are doing.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, but in current events, I want to bring up something to your attention. I don't know if you've seen it, but it was funny because my dad actually brought this up to me. And it started with, hey, did you see the movie Body Brokers?
Yes, I think I did.
Well, it was interesting for me because for somebody that's not even in this field, right? My dad being a medical doctor, physical side, it was crazy to see him bringing up facts about body brokering that you and I are well aware of because we've been in the substance abuse field now for a few years. But it's crazy to see that the actual silver screen is putting up a movie exposing the fraud behind it.
You want to see something funny? My friend produced it.
That's even better, man.
Dude, I just realized a guy that I helped, I want to say 9 years ago, who has been doing very, very well. My friend John, I won't say his last name, actually wrote and produced this movie.
That's awesome. Well, if you haven't seen it in its entirety, it's a great movie that really shows the ugliness behind substance abuse treatment and some of the poor actors that were going about, essentially selling people for commissions.
Well, and that's the thing is I think that's part of what we do is bringing awareness to this stuff is, look, we believe that treatment does work, recovery is possible, but it's also very important that people understand that they find the right places. There is a lot of negative connotation around substance abuse, mental health, and, there's a lot of people that were in the space and still in the space that did a lot of negative things and took advantage of a lot of sick people. And that's not okay. That's one of the main reasons that we started the foundation, was to give people more educated and to have a better understanding, because treatment does work, but recovery is possible. But, a lot of people in the space have made it hard for people to believe in that, and that's why we're trying to turn that edge. Is there are a lot of good players out there, and there are a lot of people that can really make a real change in your life and help you, guide you, and direct you on that path. So that's why we're here. And, I think without further ado, it's kind of great to be able to have the guests that we have on today.
Yeah, absolutely. So our guest today, she is Amy from Gratitude Lodge. She's the clinical director, and we're actually bringing her on today to also help us announce some very exciting news coming up. So with further ado, this is Amy from Gratitude Lodge.
Hello.
How are you, Amy?
Thanks for having me.
Well, thanks for being here. It's crazy. Amy, we met downstairs and, we had our mask on due to COVID, and she goes, "I know you." And I was like, uh-oh. And she actually treated me many years ago, and it's so good to see you. So good to see you and see how amazing the work is. See the work that you're doing. It's incredible.
Thank you. And it's amazing to see the work you've been doing as well.
Well, I appreciate that.
You took sobriety and ran with it.
It's changed and transformed my life. I'll never forget, one of the most pivotal points in my life was the introduction with you and Dr. Dan. As you guys are ones that I literally lean back. I look back and look at how much you guys have transformed my life. So I'm very grateful for the work you guys do.
Thank you.
Yeah. So Amy, on that, based on seeing Jason then versus now, what would you say is like the biggest polarizing thing that you notice?
I think it's your awareness. awareness of wanting to give back to other people. Because isn't that the crux of this?
It really is. I mean, I always say there's nothing more beautiful than giving back and not looking for anything in return. And I was not like that when I was in my addiction. I was the complete opposite. How could I take how could I steal your wallet and help you look for it?
Right, exactly.
That's funny. Switching gears over to you, Amy. So we have a very important question for you.
All right.
So when you were a child, what did you want to be when you grew up?
A ballerina.
Like
Okay.
my wife. Now, what inspired you to want to be a ballerina?
Just the grace, and the costuming.
Right? How long did that last for?
Probably till I was 13.
So it was a pretty good duration of your. I mean, and when did you notice that you wanted to be a ballerina? At what age?
Oh, probably about 7.
So there was a long term. So what happened? Why didn't you pursue that?
Well, I think what happened is my own addiction started to take play. And it wasn't really the chemicals as it was smoking, actually. I started experimenting with cigarettes.
Wow, let's talk about that for a second.
Yeah.
So you started engaging in smoking cigarettes, and that was kind of the crux or the moment that things started to get derailed. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, and in my home life too, my parents were divorcing. My mom came out with mental illness. My father was he was starting his recovery in alcoholism because he was in my first years an alcoholic.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you started
it's
to
a family.
You started to endure and see a lot come to light though at a very young age.
Yeah, my grandfather was an alcoholic as well, on both sides. So I come from a long line of alcoholics.
Yeah, we all know that it runs in the family. That's for sure.
So talking about the cigarettes, what was the initial motivation for picking them up? Was it because you were trying to be cool with the friends or curious and wanted to see what all the rage was about?
It really was about going to school, and it was junior high for me, and really not feeling like I belonged because of what was going on at home, the chaos at home, and then thinking that other kids weren't going through that. And so I kind of gravitated to a group of kids that were going through the same stuff as I was, and then they were the ones that were smoking.
Product of your environment.
So it almost sounds similar to why a bunch of kids typically end up in like gang culture and things like that. It's looking for that place to fit in, and then you find it, and obviously, you're not associating with the best people for probably your well-being, and they tend to drag you down to these things. Your example being cigarettes, others being, gang violence or gang culture, or sometimes even harder drugs and things like that. But it sounds very similar to that.
I find it fascinating. Out of all the guests that we've had on this show, the 50 guests that we've had, not one person's ever initiated it with cigarettes. And that was even myself when I identify. So it's something that you bring out because that was my first, when trouble started to happen, is when I was trying to go smoke cigarettes. So where did that domino? Where did that take you?
Well, it took me to, of course, pot.
Right.
And then drinking. And my first attempt at drinking, of course, wasn't just having a few drinks. It was like half a gallon of Red Mountain wine.
Oh my God. Oh God. Oh my God.
And getting sick at the spins and then going, I don't think I want to do this. So I went back to pot.
Right.
Because I didn't get crazy on pot.
So when you picked up the cigarette to when you started to smoke weed and engage in a box of wine, how long did that take? How much time between the two?
Oh, probably about a year.
Okay. So it wasn't too short, wasn't too long though.
Either. No, not at all.
So by 14, 15, you were off to the races?
Well, I actually didn't drink a lot. I think I did more pot. It was when I was 18 that the drinking started up again. And then I blacked out again. And I was never one of those
So you
people.
had instant blackouts?
Yeah. I have what they call the pre-genetic predisposition. That was me. Coming from a long line of alcoholics, right?
Correct.
Yeah. So
dang, right off the bat. I mean, I got into blackouts for sure, but thank God it didn't start like that, man.
Yeah. Man, I don't think I drank like a lady, as they say, or one drink.
Right.
It was on. Yeah.
Yeah.
Were there any instances when you were drinking or smoking where you kind of took a step back and thought that this wasn't, the best use of your time, or you shouldn't be doing this? And then if so, what did you do after that?
Well, the way I looked at it is I didn't want to turn out like my family. I saw myself with what my family went through, my dad, my aunts, uncles, that kind of thing. And I said, I don't want to do this. So
Right.
that's why I backed off and just tried to do the marijuana maintenance stuff that they talk about,
Right.
for a long time, and then found psychedelics. And then that's where I was off and running. I love to do the psychedelics.
So when did that come into your life?
I'm about 18.
So 18 is when
I didn't
you
want
went-
to drink like the crazy people. I didn't want to end up in blackouts and all of that stuff.
So where did the psychedelics end up taking you?
Well, like mushrooms and peyote, that type of stuff, LSD.
Right. So and by
And
doing
that's pretty much all I did for a while.
how long did that last?
Oh, probably I'd say about a year or 2 years.
And during that time, was there, with your family and all that dynamic, did things ever get better? Did they get worse? Or
No, they got worse. Yeah, with the family destruction. Yeah,
and
definitely.
Do you see that being a big part of the going from one extreme to the next was also in conjunction with the family dynamic?
I think that the psychedelics is really about it really left me in a little fantasy land to not look at what was going on. Number one, number two, with mescaline, which is something I tried, I really found a lot of psychological mind exploring
Right.
trips that really led me to where I am today, in a sense, because I was thinking on mescaline that I was figuring out life's problems.
Oh my gosh.
It's kind of funny.
Where were your parents during this
my
time?
mom was, like I said, mentally ill. My mom was schizophrenic. So my
Bless her
mom
heart.
so she ended up for a long time in what they call like a residential program for
Right.
a while.
Right.
And so my dad had custody of us.
Right.
And then he met somebody that kind of came in, but it wasn't a great transition when she
Right.
came in. So that caused a lot of problems there too,
Got
of
it.
not feeling like I fit in.
Right. So it was, I mean, you had, dealing with a mother that was, dealing with her own issues. I mean, you trying to cope and handle that. Parents are split up. Dad struggles with alcoholism, right? And then, a new lady comes into your life, and that is not a smooth transition. So it just kind of all culminates, right?
And then my dad actually did get sober when he had to commit her.
No way.
Yeah. And he was almost 40 years sober when he died.
Oh my God. Wow.
So
Did your dad, when he got sober, how did that impact your life?
actually, I took off running. When
Okay.
he got sober, I was into everything.
And how long was that lasting for you? When he got sober, how long did it end up, did the hard drugs take a part of your life?
Oh, it just kept progressing until I was 28.
28 years old.
And that's when I walked in to treatment and said
So what
uncle.
was that moment of clarity then?
The moment of clarity again, recognizing I had a 2-year-old son when I got sober. And I recognized that I was going down the same path and creating the same pattern as how I was raised. And I thought, this has got to change.
History repeating itself, right?
I really saw that. That was my moment of clarity. When I came out of it, it was probably coming out of a blackout, because then drinking and cocaine was my DOC, drug of choice.
Right.
That's my combination that I kept doing. And I woke up out of a blackout going, one more time, hungover, thinking, here I am doing the same thing as my parents, same chaos. And I'm doing this with my 2-year-old son, not being there. Like, I'd be hungover, trying to parent him. And it was just awful.
So looking back and at the progression of, starting with cigarettes, moving to pot, drinking, psychedelics, and now we're talking about alcohol and cocaine, do you feel as if you were almost trying to really escape that reality that you were living in, and you were trying to, take it to the next level to really detach from what you were going through at home?
Yeah. It was really not knowing what to do with those feelings. I kept stuffing them down, and it was like a beach ball, they just kept coming up. So there was a time where I didn't want to be sober.
Okay. And then after you got your moment of clarity in your late 20s, what did you do from there?
I went into treatment, and I went into a 60-day treatment. And I had to leave. The hardest thing was leaving my 2-year-old son for 60 days with his dad and his dad's parents.
It just rings my heartstrings because I can relate to that very much. My daughter was born when I was in detox.
Mm-hmm.
So I can relate to that. So what is it that you do today? I mean, because I want to get into the solution. You were talking about, what was the drug you were taking that helped you almost get to the life that you had today?
Oh, mescaline.
Mescaline. I want to hear about that. I really want to focus on the solution though, and what you do to maintain, how you processed all those emotions that you went through, all those trials and tribulations, the trauma that you went through to get to where you're at today.
Mm-hmm. Well, back then, just touching on the mescaline aspect of it, what was really interesting is I grabbed a book by this guy named Wayne Dyer.
Okay.
And I also read this book from Carlos Castaneda when I was 18. And Carlos Castaneda, for those of you that don't know, he's kind of like wrote about this Native American that use mescaline and all this for self-journey, like the Native Americans do. And I really am drawn to that culture for some reason. And really about rising up from the ego. And that kind of helped me to realize the stuff that happened to me in the past doesn't have to be who I am today. And that was the biggest turning point. And then I went through this treatment program, and I had a DUI before going in the program, and I had to do community service. And one of the things that I did in the treatment or when I was about a year sober, is I had to go do my community service, and I did it at this treatment program that I went through. And this was a program, their detox. You didn't have medication to come down. We called it back then spin dry, shake and bake.
Right.
No meds. If you had a seizure, then they would take you to the hospital to give you the medication.
Wow.
So it was pretty rough. In fact, I'm in my 20s. The girl in the bed next to me has a seizure and falls out of bed. And I was ready. I was thinking at the time prior to that, I was going to run out the door and leave the program and get home to my son because I had to be there for him. And when I saw her fall out of the bed, having a seizure at 20, she was only 26 years old. I stopped and go, okay, I got to take a look at this. And then probably within the same day or maybe the next day, 4 people in the program, in the detox, were sitting there talking amongst themselves with the drugalogs, as we call it, talking about how wonderful it was. They end up leaving. I watched them leave. I stay. To me, that was kind of a miracle, whatever. One of the ladies that was in that group ended up with a high blood alcohol content and in a coma. And if that wasn't something telling me, you better stay.
Right.
And that to me was my turning point, that I knew I had to take advantage of whatever they wanted me to say.
So a light came on.
Whatever they wanted me to do, I was willing to do it.
What were the names of those books?
It's Wayne Dyer, Exploring Your Erroneous Zones, I think. And the other one was Carlos Castaneda. I can't remember exactly the title.
Right.
Yeah.
And I mean, I know last week I was, listening to the podcast, and Hilary even brought that up and mentioned that. And it's just a really important message, almost like giving up hope of a better past, and you can't dwell on it. It's something to look back on and to be able to utilize it as motivation, right? There's a big difference between dwelling and remembering. And I think it's what you're saying is those are really, really important points for people that are going through, because we can't change what we went through. It only becomes, bad decisions when we don't learn from them.
Exactly.
So
when I did the community service,
right,
I was having to help in detox, and there was a guy that was shaking so profusely he couldn't even hold anything in his hand to eat.
Oh wow! So
I had to feed the guy hot water and honey. If you want to talk about a rush, better than any high you had on drugs or alcohol, that was it for me. That was like the light went on, and I said, I want to do this. And when I think about that, that was 35 years ago, over 35 years ago. And when I think about that, I still tear up, because that connection of helping somebody that's struggling and what they're feeling. and to help them with that.
Being of service.
Yeah.
So
And-
35 years of sobriety.
And don't count how old I am.
No, you're not. I was thinking 28. I couldn't have been. So I was like, my math was off. But it's just incredible, though. I mean, because you've also got to see a lot of the transitions. I mean, especially back 30 years ago versus today. I mean,
Yeah.
even when I was in treatment, 10, 15 years ago, to where, going back again after I relapsed and stuff, and to see how much stuff has changed and how much more access there is, how much more research, how much more stuff is done. It's incredible. But I'd love to know, because a lot of people that listen to our show have dealt with a lot of the trauma and a lot of the history stuff that you've specifically talked about, and growing up in an unstable environment, right? What were the things that you did after you actively arrested the disease, you got stabilized, you started to obtain some sobriety? What were some of the stuff that you did, to start focusing and working on some of those issues that you were trying to run away from initially?
And then therapy, and then also I had going through a treatment program too, which I think is important, where you have the groups,
right,
and you have the individual treatment.
Correct. What types of therapy, is there any, how long did you do therapy for?
I've done probably therapy, I've done off and on for at least 30 years.
Wow.
Yeah. I tried to do therapy, intense therapy at a year of sobriety, and I really wasn't ready, and then after that, I really got into therapy. And then then I ended up working in the field at a year sober, which is a crazy thing to do. That's another therapy.
Right.
But what I learned in doing that is you do not make that your program or your recovery. You learn
100%.
boundaries. And I'm grateful I learned that, because I saw a lot of people working in treatment that don't. They make it their recovery.
That was me. I got too enmeshed in it, and that became my program. I lost boundaries, and it ended up taking me out.
Yeah,
on the road.
it does.
So I appreciate that. So from that piece, and did you ever have resolution with your father?
Oh yeah, wonderful.
Let's hear about that a little bit.
Sure. Gosh, that was a journey. I think in a lady named Louise Hay, I'm going to name drop again. She wrote a book, You Can Heal Your Life. One of the things she talks about is that we try to look at what our parents have done. How were they raised? Can they transmit something that they don't have? And that helped me a lot to realize that my dad came from alcoholic parents. His mother died of cancer. He had a big family, and he wasn't able to give me what I needed. I always took it like my dad, the way he parented me was that he didn't love me, and something was wrong with me, which kids do. And we could do a whole show on that.
Yes.
Right? But really getting that he couldn't transmit what he didn't have, and forgiving him for that. And man, I'll tell you, when he died, which was in about the time I went to work at Mission in 2009, my dad died. And when he died, I was able to just have everything worked out with him. And I actually took care of him the last year of his life.
Right.
And I felt really clean, with that. And he made his amends to me. But the other thing I looked at with him is I stopped looking for him to say, I'm proud of you. And when I stopped doing that and healed, he started telling me, Amy, I'm really proud of you.
Yeah, well, looking for that validation, in areas when, it maybe wasn't even due, to the point of you being able to give validation to yourself, right? And then it came along. I mean, that's so, what an incredible story. I mean, that's just the gifts of sobriety, though. I mean, to hear the destruction and the chaos that you grew up in, by you getting sober, keeping your side of the street clean, surrounding yourself with good people, to being able to help your dad with his last year of his life. I mean, we'll talk about a picture perfect, scenario and a story, how that's come full circle.
Yeah. So it sounds to me, one of the things that I always thought was kind of curious and funny. So being a kid and looking up to your parents, they're almost like everything, right? You expect them to be able to do everything and anything because they're your parents, and you hold them to a certain standard. And I learned that as I got older and really started to see my parents for who they were, it's kind of like, it sounds similar to what you learned in that book. You can't fault them for what they're unable to give you, right? But really appreciate what they were able to give you. And if there are any deficiencies or something, you may need to find it elsewhere, but to kind of have that hopelessness of trying to get that from your parents does nothing other than just create pain for you typically.
Mm-hmm. And that's kind of on a psychological level. That's where we are as kids, though. We think the world wraps around us, right?
Mhm.
And we think that we're responsible for a lot of things. And so, therefore, that stage of development, we really look to our parents to kind of keep validating that.
Right.
Yeah.
So let's talk about today. So now you are the clinical director at Gratitude Lodge. You've worked with a couple of doctors and individuals that Jason and I are very familiar with. So we know that you come from a great cloth that you're cut from.
Mm-hmm.
So what can you tell us about working in the actual full-blown treatment field now that you had your own experiences personally? You had that moment of clarity. You saw, you had that kind of inner fire ignited when you were helping that gentleman that was unable to, drink his hot water with honey. And where did that take you to today?
Well, I started out working as support staff, went at the same place I went through. Then I transitioned to case manager, went to Saddleback College
Mm-hmm.
and received my drug and alcohol studies
Certification.
Yep. And then from there, kept going and got my master's in counseling psychology.
Boom.
Awesome.
And then worked in treatment the whole time. So I'm lucky to say, for me, I feel lucky that I've been in every aspect of treatment, starting from support staff on to being the clinical director now. And I keep trying to leave treatment, and I just keep coming back. So
No, it's your calling. I mean, your story is very, very inspiring, and it's very relatable. A lot of people can connect with it, and your humility and transparency and sharing this is there's a connection with that, and it's even more credible. I mean, that's how I started. I mean, I started in recovery as a recovery advocate and worked my way all the way up. Never got masters or anything like that. Never went back to school, but I climbed the ropes in the treatment space, and it's almost the best way to learn, though. You get the ins and outs of the way everything operates, and to see that you've stuck with it this long. I mean, 30 years in this space is, I mean, like I said, you've seen major shifts and major changes, and you've helped and impacted I don't know how many thousands of people. So I'm just appreciative and grateful for you.
Yeah, and on that note, Jason, we have a big announcement coming up March 15th, thanks to Amy and Gratitude Lodge. So to your point, Jason, helping, tens, hundreds, thousands of people, we're going to have an amazing opportunity to help one more. So Amy, why don't you let our viewers know that we will have this amazing opportunity available on March 15th?
Yeah, our opportunity is that we're going to have a scholarship openings in our program for the clients.
That is amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead, man.
I was going to say, so if you'd like more information, it'll be up on our social media as well as our website with an application. Applications will be closing on April 1, so please get them in between March 15 and April 1, and we'll be happy to announce the winner in the beginning of April here.
Yeah, so if you or a loved one is struggling, please reach out. We'll send you guys the application. You'll fill it out. It will get sent over to the clinical team. They'll assess who's the most appropriate fit, but they're offering a scholarship, and we cannot thank you guys enough. Thank you, Gratitude Lodge, and just appreciate all of the service and everything you guys are doing.
Thank you. And I want to just say, the one reason I work at Gratitude Lodge is the owners, they really care. If I've worked in many places where if the client's insurance is up, they're kicking them out the door.
Right.
And I have to say, Gratitude Lodge doesn't operate that way. The owners, Mark Williams and Brooke Butler, they really care about clients, and they try to meet the clients where they're at.
That's
and
incredible.
If they have to scholarship, they'll help. I'm of course not in charge of that part of it,
right?
But they really do. If a client's really struggling, they're not going to just say, "Okay, well, your treatment is up, you got to go." And I've worked in too many programs where that's happened.
Right. You've seen. I mean, you've worked from hospitals to, like you said, multiple different treatment centers in the area, and that's the thing is we've seen that happen to so many people. And that extra few weeks, month, it could have really changed somebody's life. And I think it's very important to point that out. I mean, that's exactly what we strive for and look for. And people that are providing care for the people that come to us is people that really care and genuinely love the work they do, but they care about their patients.
Yeah, so let's end this show on a high note. We got an amazing scholarship opportunity. One other thing we're going to ask you for, Amy, is an action for the day.
Is gratitude.
Gratitude. Nice plug
Being
there.
gratitude.
Yeah, great. Yeah, there you go. No, gratitude
go
is
wrong.
you can't go wrong with gratitude. It's something that I do every day still. I don't send you my list anymore, Alex, because I never got one in return. So
That's okay.
Just calling him out a little bit. But so yeah, I do a gratitude list every day. Yeah. I love it. Well, thank you so much for coming on and being a part of this. And thank you so much for the scholarship. And guys, if people want to find out more about Gratitude Lodge or find you, where can they go?
They can either contact me at amy@gratitudelodge.com or ethan@gratitudelodge.com.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much and have a beautiful day. And thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Amy.
Thank you.
What a blast from the past for me. It was cool that, I'd connected with her and she actually was a part of my recovery process and my journey. It's crazy. But I mean, her story it really resonated with me. And I know I said it in the show, but just the fact of even looking back to the point of when you started engaging in, any negative behavior, like, cigarettes, it's not necessarily, and it's not applauded, but it was definitely not nearly as much as bad as drinking or smoking weed or doing coke or something. And it's like, I look at that. And when she said that, it made me realize like, God, my whole journey, started right after I engaged smoking cigarettes.
Yeah, it's crazy to think that with all the guests that we've had on this show, everybody kind of talks about what got them into those behaviors, right? And to see that it's never just one thing. It's that habitual process of finding something, getting the fix or getting that detachment from whatever they're dealing with, and then progressing in one way or the other, until finally there's that moment of clarity and kind of the light bulb goes off.
Yeah. And I think just in closing to everything that she went through is, she had a lot of reasons to want to escape, her life. But, at the end, it became full circle that, that was the last thing that she should have been doing. And, we strive to escape what's really going on when in reality, we need to embrace it and sit with it and figure out, how we can get through this process.
Yeah, absolutely right. So that's another episode of Let the Journey Begin. We'll have Hilary back next week and you guys will be able to do this on your own.
Yeah, bro. Sounds good.
But
Thanks,
I'll be
bro.
back soon.